Chapter 26. Once he was sure he had shaken off any possible pursuers, Ezio turned his horse. He was loath to lose such a good animal, but he took it to the stables where he and Machiavelli had hired horses what seemed like a lifetime ago, and turned it over to the chief ostler there. The stables were neat and clean, and clearly doing a thriving business in a district that seemed to have shaken off Borgia control, and for the moment at least, maintained its independence. Then he made his way back towards Tiber Island on foot. The assassin's secret ferry was waiting at the bank, and once on the island itself, he hastened towards the hideout. Inside, he found that Caterina had arrived safely. She was lying on a makeshift bed near the door, being tended by a doctor. She smiled as she saw him, and tried to sit up, but the doctor gently restrained her. "Ezio, I am relieved to see you safe." He took her hand and squeezed it. "Where is Machiavelli?" There was no return of his pressure, but perhaps she was still too weak. "I don't know." La Volpe emerged from the shadows at the end of the room. "Ezio, good to see you again." He embraced the younger man. "I brought your Contessa here. As for Machiavelli—" Just then the main door swung open and Machiavelli himself came in. He looked drawn. "Where have you been?" asked La Volpe. "Looking for Ezio. Not that I am accountable to you," said Machiavelli. Ezio was saddened to note the tension that still existed between his two friends. Machiavelli turned to Ezio and, without ceremony, asked, "What of Cesare and Rodrigo?" "Cesare left almost immediately for Urbino. As for Rodrigo, he was at the Vatican." "That's odd," said Machiavelli. "Rodrigo should have been in the Castel." "Very odd indeed," put in La Volpe evenly. If he'd noticed the dig, Machiavelli ignored it. "What a wasted opportunity," he mused. Then, recollecting himself, he said to Caterina, "No offence, Contessa. We are glad to see you safe." "I take none," she said. "Now that Cesare has gone to Urbino, we must concentrate on building our forces here." Machiavelli raised his eyebrows. "But I thought we intended to strike now. We should go after him and cut him down where he stands." "That would be impossible," Caterina said. "I have seen his army. It is massive. You would never reach him." Ezio said, "I say we work here, in Rome. Here we've already made a good start. We should continue to erode the Borgia influence while restoring our own. And, in fact, I want to begin immediately." "You speak as if you are already our leader," said Machiavelli. "But the post has not been discussed, let alone ratified, by our council." "And I say we need a leader, and we need one right away," countered La Volpe. "We have no time for councils and ratifications. We need to consolidate the Brotherhood once again, and for my money, Ezio is the right man for the job. Machiavelli, I appeal to you. You and I are two of the most senior assassins left. Bartolomeo is bound to agree. Let us make this decision now. Keep it secret if you like, and later we can put it to a formal vote." Machiavelli seemed to be on the point of speech, but then let it go and simply shrugged. "I will not fail you," Ezio said. "Gilberto, I'd like you to bring Bartolomeo and my sister Claudia here. There are matters to discuss. Niccolo, please come with me." On his way out, Ezio paused by Caterina's bed. "Take care of her," he said to the doctor. "Where are we going?" Machiavelli asked once they were back in the city centre. "There's something I want to show you." He led the way to the nearest market square. Half of it was open for business. There was a baker, a butcher was swatting flies away from his wares, and a greengrocer had a selection of rather tired-looking produce on sale. Early as it was the wine shops that were doing the best business. And as Ezio expected, a small knot of Borgia guards were duffing up the hapless owner of a leather goods stall. "Look," said Ezio as they blended in with the small crowd of shoppers. "I know what is going on," said Machiavelli. "I know you do, Niccolò," said Ezio. "Forgive me. But you see the big picture. You understand what is to be done politically to break the Borgia. And I, for one, do not doubt your sincerity in this." He paused. "But we must start at a more fundamental level. The Borgia take what they want from the people with complete impunity to maintain their power." They watched the guards push the man to the ground, then, laughing, help themselves to what they fancied from his stall, and move on. The man picked himself up, watched them go in impotent rage, and then, close to tears, began to rearrange his goods. A woman came up to comfort him, but he shook her off. Nevertheless, she stayed, hovering near him, care and concern in her eyes. "Why did you not help him?" asked Machiavelli. "Send them packing." "Look," said Ezio. "Helping one man is good, but it will not solve the problem. They will come back when we are not here, and they will do the same again. Look at the quality of the stuff on offer here. The vegetables are old, the meat is fly-blown, and the bread, no doubt, is hard. The best goes to the Borgia. And why do you think so many people are drinking?" Machiavelli said, "I do not know." "Because they are in pain," Ezio replied. "They are without hope, and they are oppressed. They want to blot it all out. But we can change that." "How?" "By recruiting them to our cause." He spread his arms. "These people, these are the ones who will form the backbone of our resistance to the Borgia." "We've talked of this before," said Machiavelli sharply. "You cannot be serious." "I'm going to start with that stallholder. To win this war, Niccolò, we need loyal soldiers, however they fight for us. We must sow the seeds of rebellion in their minds." He paused, then continued earnestly. "By recruiting those whom the bullying state has made its enemies, we arm the people who have been disarmed by the Borgia." Machiavelli looked at his friend long and hard. "Go then," he said. "Go and recruit our first novices." "Oh, I intend to," said Ezio. "And you will see that from the group of determined men and women I gather round us, I will forge a sword capable of cutting the limbs and head from the trunk of the Borgia, and of the Templars themselves." Chapter 27. Ezio returned to the assassin centre of operations on Tiber Island alone. He had done a good day's work, discreetly converting a number of disaffected citizens to his cause. Apart from the loyal attendants who staffed and guarded the place, it was deserted, and Ezio looked forward to a little quiet time to think and plan. But as he approached, he found he had a visitor. One who wanted to be quite sure that his presence would not be noted, and one who, therefore, waited until the general staff had gone about their business elsewhere in the building before he made himself known. "Psst! Ezio, over here." "Who's there?" Ezio was instantly alert, though he already thought he knew the voice. Tall bushes grew on either side of the lane that led to their headquarters, which was known to no one outside their organization. If by any chance the secret had been penetrated. "Come here." "Who is it?" "It's me." Leonardo da Vinci, dandified and distracted as ever, stepped out of his hiding place into the lane. Leo! My God! Ezio, remembering who Leonardo's new master was, checked his initial impulse, which had been to run and embrace his old friend. His reaction registered with Leonardo, who looked a little older to be sure, but who had lost none of his elan or vigorous enthusiasm. He took a step forward, but kept his head lowered. I'm not surprised you don't show that much enthusiasm at seeing me again. Well, Leo, I must admit that you have disappointed me. Leonardo spread his hands. I knew you were behind the break-in at the Castel. It could only have been you. So I knew you were still alive. Surely your new masters would have told you that. They tell me nothing. I'm no more than a slave to them. There was the smallest twinkle in Leonardo's eye. But they have to trust me. As long as you deliver. I think I'm just about bright enough to stay one step ahead of them. Leonardo took another step towards Ezio, arms half held out. It is good to see you again, my friend. You have designed weapons for them, new guns which we will find difficult to match. I know, but if you'll let me explain. And how did you find this place? I can explain. Leonardo looked so contrite and so unhappy, and he seemed so sincere that Ezio's heart warmed, despite himself, towards his old friend. He also reflected that, after all, Leonardo had come to see him, no doubt at great personal risk, and that if he sought a rapprochement, it would be a foolish leader indeed who would turn down the friendship and the partnership of such a man. Come here, cried Ezio, spreading his arms wide. Oh, Ezio! Leonardo hurried forward, and the two men embraced warmly. Ezio led his friend into the assassin headquarters, where they sat down together. Ezio knew that Caterina had been moved to an inner room, where she could complete her recovery in peace and quiet, and the doctor had given orders that she was not to be disturbed. He was tempted to disobey, but there would be time enough for talk with her later. Besides, Leonardo's appearance dictated a change of priorities. Ezio had wine and cakes brought for them. Tell me everything, said Ezio. I will explain. First of all, you must forgive me. The Borgia commandeered my services, but under duress. If I'd refused to serve them, they would have subjected me to a long and painful death. They described what they would do to me if I refused to help them. Even now I cannot think of it without trembling. You're perfectly safe now. Leonardo shook his head. No, I must go back to them. I'm of far more use to you if they think I'm still working for them. As it is, I've done my utmost to create the minimum possible number of new inventions to satisfy them. Ezio was about to interrupt, but Leonardo held up a nervous hand. Please, this is a kind of confession, and I'd like to complete it. Then you may judge me as you think fit. No one is judging you, Leonardo. Leonardo's manner became more intense. Ignoring the refreshments, he leant forward. I say I work for them under duress, he went on, but it is more than that. You know I keep out of politics. I like to keep my nose clean. But men who seek power seek me out because they know what I can do for them. This I do know. I play along to stay alive. And why do I wish to stay alive? Because I have so much to do. He took a breath. I cannot tell you, Ezio, how my poor brain teems. He made a gesture that seemed partly all-embracing, partly despairing. There is so much to discover. Ezio was silent. This he also knew. So, Leonardo concluded, now you know. Why have you come here? To make amends. I had to assure you that my heart is not with them. And what do they want of you? Whatever they can get. War machines are the main thing. They know what I'm capable of. Leonardo produced a packet of papers, which he handed over. Here are some of the designs I've done for them. Look, here is an armoured vehicle capable, if correctly constructed, of moving across all terrains, and the men concealed within it can fire guns, big guns, while remaining fully protected from all assaults. I call it a tank. Ezio blenched as his eye scanned the drawings. And is it under construction? Leonardo looked artful. I said, if correctly constructed. Unfortunately, as the design stands, the thing is only able to swivel on its own axis. I see, Ezio smiled. And look at this. Ezio perused a drawing of a horseman managing 2 horses harnessed side by side. Attached to their traces by long horizontal poles at front and rear, where there were also wheels, were rotating scythe-like devices, which could be used to cut down any enemy at which the horseman rode. A fiendish device, he said. Yes, but unfortunately the horseman himself is fully exposed. Leonardo's eyes twinkled some more. Ezio's smile broadened, then faded again. But what of the guns you have given them? Leonardo shrugged. One has to throw a sop to Cerberus, he said. I have to give them something of actual use, or they will grow suspicious. But they are very efficient guns. Indeed they are, but they are not half as efficient as that little pistol I made for you once, years ago, based on the design from the Codex page. A pity, really. I had trouble reining myself in on that one. Ezio thought sadly of his lost Codex weapons, but he would come back to them. What else is in this packet of papers? Although they were alone, Leonardo lowered his voice. I have copied the plans not only for the largest of the machines, but also for where they are to be used in battle. He spread his hands ironically. Alas, that they should not be more efficient. Ezio looked at his old friend admiringly. This was the man who had designed a submarine for the Venetians to use against the Turkish galleys. If he had chosen not to build in defects to these designs, there would be no hope at all against the Borgia. How glad he was to have welcomed Leonardo as he had. This man was worth more than 2 armies. For God's sake, Leo, have a glass of wine at least. I know I can never reward you enough for all this. But Leonardo waved the proffered beaker away. There is far graver news. You know they have the apple. Of course. They have given it to me to study. You and I already know something of the extent of its powers. Rodrigo knows a little less, but he has more intellect than Cesare, though Cesare is the one to watch. How much information on the apple have you given them? As little as possible, but I have to give them something. Fortunately, Cesare seems satisfied so far with the limited applications I have vouchsafed him. But Rodrigo knows there is more, and grows impatient. He paused. I had considered ways of stealing it, but it is kept under close guard, and I am only allowed access to it under the strictest supervision. I was able to use its powers to locate you, though. It has that facility, you know. Quite fascinating. And you taught them that trick? Of course not. All I want is to return it to its rightful owner. Fear not, Leo. We will recover it. In the meantime, stall them as far as you can, and if you can, keep me posted on how much you have let them know. I will. Ezio paused. There is something else. Tell me. I have lost all the Codex weapons you once fashioned for me. I see. Except for the original hidden blade. The pistol, the poison blade, the double blade, the miraculous bracer. All these are gone. Said Leonardo. Then he smiled. Well, recreating them for you may not be a problem. Really? Ezio could scarcely believe it. The designs you let me have are still in Florence, well hidden with my old assistants Agnolo and Innocento. The Borgia will never have them. If they ever took Florence, heaven forfend. Or even if the French did, Agnolo has strict orders to destroy them, and even he and Innocento, not that I do not trust them absolutely, would never be able to recreate them independently of me. But I never forget a design. However, he hesitated, almost embarrassed. You must pay me for the raw materials I will need. In advance. Ezio was astonished. Really? They're not paying you at Il Vaticano? Leonardo coughed. Very little. I suppose they think that keeping me alive is payment enough. And I am not such a fool as to think that the minute my services become superfluous to requirements, they will not kill me with as little reflection as they might kill a dog. Hardly that, said Ezio. They would rather you were dead than have you work for anyone else. Yes, I've been thinking along the same lines, said Leonardo. And there's really nowhere to run. Not that I want to. I want to see the Borgia crushed. I'll engage myself so far in politics as to say that. But my beloved Milan is in French hands. He started to muse. Perhaps, later, when all this is over, I might even try my luck in France. They say it's a very civilized country. It was time to bring him back to reality. Ezio went to an iron-bound chest and from it produced a leather pouch bulging with ducats. This he gave to Leonardo. Payment on account for the Codex weapons, he said briskly. When can you have them ready? Leonardo considered. It won't be as easy as it was last time, he said. I must work secretly and alone, for I cannot wholly trust all the assistants I have working for me here. He paused. Let me contact you again, as soon as possible, I promise. He hefted the heavy bag in his hand. And who knows? For this much money I may even be able to throw in a couple of new weapons. My own inventions this time, of course, but effective, I think you'll find. Whatever you can do for us will earn my undying gratitude and my protection, wherever you are, said Ezio. He made a mental note to delegate a handful of his new recruits, as soon as they had finished their training, to keep a watchful eye on Leonardo, and to report back regularly on him. Now, how shall we maintain contact? Leonardo said, I've thought of that. He took out a piece of chalk and, on the table between them, drew a man's right hand, pointing. It's beautiful, said Ezio. Thank you. It's just a sketch of part of a painting I've been thinking of doing, of St. John the Baptist, if I ever get round to it. Go and sit where it's pointing to. Ezio obeyed. That's it, said Leonardo. Tell your men to keep their eyes peeled. If they see one of these, it'll just look like a bit of graffiti to anyone else. Tell them to let you know and follow the direction it's pointing in. That's how we'll rendezvous. Splendid, said Ezio. Don't worry, I'll make sure you're forewarned, in case you're thinking of charging off on some mission or other. Thanks. Leonardo stood. I must go, otherwise I'll be missed. But first... First what? Leonardo grinned and shook the bag of money. First, I'm going shopping. Chapter 28. Ezio left the hideout shortly after Leonardo to continue his recruiting work, but also to keep himself busy. He was impatient to have the replacement Codex weapons back in his hands. When, later in the day, he returned for a pre-arranged meeting, it was to find that Machiavelli had preceded him. Caterina was with him, sitting in a chair, her knees covered with a fur rug. As usual, Machiavelli did not stand on ceremony. "Where have you been?" he asked. Ezio didn't like his tone. "We all have our secrets," he replied, keeping his voice level. "And may I ask, what have you been up to?" Machiavelli smiled. "I've been refining our carrier pigeon system. We can use it now to send orders to the new recruits scattered about the city." "Excellent. Thank you, Niccolo." They looked at each other. Machiavelli was almost 10 years Ezio's junior, yet there was no doubting the independence and ambition behind those veiled eyes. Did he resent Ezio's leadership? Had he hoped it might have fallen on him? Ezio put the thought aside. Surely the man was more of a theorist, a diplomat, a political animal. And there could be no doubt about his usefulness or his allegiance to the Brotherhood. If only Ezio could fully convince La Volpe of that. As if on cue, La Volpe entered the hideout, accompanied by Claudia. "What news?" Ezio asked him after the two had greeted one another. "Bartolomeo sends his apologies. It seems that General Octavian has had another stab at attacking the barracks." "I see. They redoubled their assault, but we are holding our ground." "Good." Ezio turned to his sister, coldly. "Claudia," he said, inclining his head. "Brother?" she rejoined with equal frostiness. "Please sit down, all of you," said Ezio. Once they were settled, he continued. "I have a plan prepared for the Borgia." "I suggest," Machiavelli put in immediately, "that we go either after their supplies or after Cesare's followers." "Thank you, Niccolo," said Ezio evenly. "My plan is to attack both. If we can cut off his funds, Cesare will lose his army and return without his men. How does he get his money?" La Volpe said, "We know that he depends on Rodrigo for much of his money, and Rodrigo's banker is Agostino Chigi. But Cesare also has his own banker, whose identity is yet to be confirmed, though we have our suspicions." Ezio decided for the moment to keep his own thoughts in that direction quiet. It would be best to have them confirmed, if possible, by La Volpe's men. "I know someone, a client of ours at the Rosa and Fiore, who owes the banker money. The Senator Egidio Trocche is complaining about interest rates all the time." "Bene," said Ezio. "Then we must follow that up." "There's something else," said Machiavelli. "We have news that they are planning to station French troops on the road that leads to Castel Sant'Angelo. Your attack must have really rattled them. And apparently Cesare is planning to return to Rome, immediately. Quite why so soon is beyond me, but we'll find out. In any case, when he does arrive, he'll be so well guarded that you'll never get to him. Our spies tell us that he intends to keep his return secret, at least for the moment." "He's got something up his sleeve," said La Volpe. "Brilliant," said Machiavelli, and the two men exchanged a look that wasn't friendly. Ezio considered this. Our best course of action would seem to be to corner this French general of theirs, Octavian, and kill him. Once he's out of the way, Bartolomeo will have the Frenchmen on the defensive, and they'll abandon their guard duty at the Castel. Caterina spoke for the first time. "Even with those troops gone, Ezio, the Papal Guard will continue to protect the bridge and the main gate." "Ah," said La Volpe, "but there's a side entrance. Lucrezia's latest plaything, the actor Pietro Benintendi, has a key." "Does he?" said Ezio. "I saw him with her at the Castel." "I'll have my men find out where he is," promised La Volpe. "Shouldn't be too difficult." Caterina smiled. "Sounds like a good idea. I'd like to help. We should be able to scare that key out of him, and he'll stop seeing Lucrezia. Anything to rob that bitch of any pleasure." Momentino, Contessa, said Machiavelli. We're going to have to do without your help. Caterina looked at him, surprised. Why? Because we're going to have to get you out of the city, maybe to Florence, until we can get Forli back for you. Your children are already safe there. He looked around. Ezio's rescuing you wasn't without its consequences. There are heralds all over the city, proclaiming a rich reward for the Contessa's capture, alive or dead. And no bribe can shut them up. There was silence. Then Caterina rose, letting the rug fall to the floor. Then it appears that I have outstayed my welcome, she said. Excuse me. What are you talking about? Said Ezio, alarmed. Only that I am in danger here. We will protect you, and, more importantly, a liability to you. She was looking at Machiavelli as she spoke. Isn't that so, Niccolo? Machiavelli was silent. I am answered, said Caterina. I will make my preparations at once. Chapter 29. Are you sure you're able to ride? Ezio asked her. I rode from the Castel when you rescued me, didn't I? Yes, but then there was no choice. Is there a choice now? Ezio was silent. It was the following morning, and Ezio watched as Caterina and her 2 female attendants packed the few clothes and provisions Claudia had organized for her journey. She would leave the next day before dawn. A small escort of Ezio's men would ride with her part of the way, to see her safely out of Rome. Ezio had offered to join them, but this Caterina had refused. I don't like goodbyes, she said, and the more drawn out they are, the worse they are. He watched her as she bustled about her packing. He thought about the times they had had together, long ago in Forli, and then about what he had fondly imagined was a reunion in Monteriggioni. The assassin Brotherhood seemed to have taken over his life and left him solitary. I wish you would stay, he said. Ezio, I can't. You know I can't. Dismiss your women. I have to hurry. Dismiss them. This won't take long. She did so, but he could see with what reluctance, and even then she said, Be sure to return in 5 minutes by the water clock. Once they were alone, he didn't know where to begin. Well, she said more gently, and he could see that her eyes were troubled, though by what he could not tell. I rescued you, he said lamely. You did, and I am grateful. But didn't you tell the others that you did so purely because I am still a useful ally, even with Forli gone? We'll get Forli back, and then I shall go there again. Ezio was silent again. His heart felt empty. She came up to him and put her hands on his shoulders. Ezio, listen. I am no use to anyone without Forli. If I leave now, it is to seek safety and to be with my children. Don't you want that for me? Yes. Well then. I didn't rescue you because you're valuable to the cause. It was her turn to be silent. But because, don't say it, Ezio. Why not? Because I cannot say it back. No weapon could have cut him more deeply than those words. You used me then. That sounds rather harsh. What other words would you wish me to use? I tried to explain earlier. You are a ruthless woman. I am a woman with work to do and a duty. Then whatever serves your cause goes. She was silent again, then said, "I've tried to explain this to you already. You must accept it." She had taken her hands from his shoulders. He could see that her mind had wandered back to her journey, and that she was looking at the things yet to be packed. He thought, recklessly, "To hell with the Brotherhood. I know what I want. Why shouldn't I live for myself for a change?" "I'm coming with you," he said. She turned to him again, her eyes serious. "Listen, Ezio. Perhaps you are making a choice, but you are making it too late. Perhaps I have done the same thing. But you are the leader of the assassins now. Don't give up the work you have started, the great work of rebuilding after the disaster at Monteriggioni. Without you, things will fall apart again, and then who will there be to save us?" "But you never really wanted me." He looked at her. She was still there in the room with him, but her spirit had long gone. How long ago it had left him he did not know. Perhaps it had never really been there. Perhaps he had only hoped for it, or imagined it. At that moment, he felt that he was looking at the corpse of love. Yet still he refused to believe in its death. But like any other death, he saw that he had no choice but to get used to the reality. There was a knock at the door. "Come in," said Caterina, and her attendants returned. Ezio left them to their packing. The next morning Ezio was determined to resist seeing Caterina off, but he could not. It was cold, and when he got to the appointed square, in a safe district of the city, they were already mounted, the horses restless. Perhaps even now, at the last moment, she would relent. But her eyes, though kind, were distant. He thought he could have borne things better if she hadn't looked at him with kindness. Kindness was almost humiliating. All he could say was, "Buona fortuna, Contessa," and "Farewell." Let's hope it's not farewell. Oh, I think it is. She looked at him once more. "Well then, buona fortuna anche, my prince, and vittoria agli assassini." She wheeled her horse round, and without another word or even a backward glance, at the head of her guardian entourage, she galloped north out of the city and out of his life. He watched them until they were mere specks in the distance, a lonely, middle-aged man who had been given a last chance at love, and missed it. "Vittoria agli assassini," murmured Ezio tonelessly to himself, as he turned and made his way back into the still sleeping city. Chapter 30. With Cesare's return imminent, Ezio had to put his private grief aside and get on with the work fate had given him. In his attempt to cut Cesare off from his funds, the first step was to find and neutralize Cesare's banker, and the initial lead as to who that was would come from the Rosa in Fiore. "What do you want?" Claudia couldn't have been less friendly if she'd tried. "You spoke of a senator at the meeting." "Yes, I did. Why?" "You said he owed money to Cesare's banker. Is he here?" She shrugged. "You'll probably find him on the Campidoglio. Surely you don't need my help for that?" "What does he look like?" "Oh, let me see. Average?" "Don't play games with me, sister." Claudia relented slightly. "He's maybe 60, lean, worried-looking, clean-shaven, grey hair. Your height, or a little less. Name's Egidio Troche. Stubborn type, Ezio, pessimistic, set in his ways. You'll have your work cut out trying to get round him." "Thank you." Ezio looked at her hard. Now, I intend to track down this banker and kill him. I've a pretty shrewd idea who he is, but I need to find out where he lives. This senator could lead me to him. The banker's security's pretty tight. So would yours be, if you were in a position like his. You think mine isn't? As if I cared. Listen, Claudia, if I'm tough with you, it's because I worry about you. Spare me. You're doing well. Thank you, kind sir. But I need you to organize a big job for me. Once I've neutralized this banker, I need your girls to get his money to a place of safety. Just let me know when, or should I say, if, you succeed. Just stay alert. In a dark mood, Ezio set off for the Capitoline Hill, the administrative centre of Rome, where he was greeted by a busy scene. There were several senators going about their business in the broad piazza around which the government buildings were arranged, accompanied by secretaries and assistants, who carried papers in leather folders and bustled after their masters as they moved from building to building, all of them trying to look as busy and important as possible. As far as he could, Ezio blended into the melee, keeping a watchful eye out for a man answering the description Claudia had given him. As he moved through the crowd, he kept his ears pricked for any hint he might pick up about his quarry. There was certainly no sign of Egidio among the senators at the moment, though he seemed to be providing his colleagues with a lively topic of conversation. "Egidio's been asking for money again," said one. "When doesn't he? What's it for this time?" "Oh, some proposal to reduce the number of public executions." "Ridiculous." Ezio moved on to another knot of senators, and there he gleaned more information. He wasn't sure, from what he heard, whether Egidio was a militant, and therefore foolish, liberal reformer, or a rather ham-fisted con-man. "Egidio's petitioning for an end to the torturing of witnesses in the criminal courts," the leading member of the next group was saying. "Fat chance," replied the harassed-looking man he was talking to. "It's just a front, anyway. All he really wants the money for is to pay off his debts. And he wants to get rid of exemption licenses. Please, like that's going to happen. Every citizen who feels mistreated by our laws should surely be permitted to pay for an exemption from those laws. It's our duty. After all, it's our own Holy Father who brought the exemption licenses in, and he's following the example of Christ himself. Blessed are the merciful." Another Borgia scam for making money, thought Ezio, while the other senator rejoined, "Why should we give any money to Egidio? Everyone knows what he'd do with it." The two men laughed and went about their business. Ezio's attention was then attracted by a small group of Borgia guards who had Cesare's personal crest, 2 red bulls quartered with fleur-de-lis, sewn onto their doublets. As this always spelt trouble, he made his way over to them and saw, as he approached, that they had surrounded one of the senators. The others were carrying on as if nothing out of the ordinary was happening, but Ezio could see that they left plenty of space between the guards and themselves. The unfortunate senator answered Claudia's description perfectly. "No more arguing," the guard sergeant was saying. "Your payment's due," added his corporal, "and a debt's a debt." Egidio had dropped any pretence of dignity, and was pleading. "Make an exception for an old man," he quavered. "I beg of you." "No," snarled the sergeant, nodding to 2 of his men, who seized Egidio and threw him to the ground. "The banker has sent us to collect, and you know what that means." "Look, give me until tomorrow. This evening. I'll have the money ready then." "Not good enough," responded the sergeant, kicking the senator hard in the stomach. He stepped back, and the corporal and the other 2 guards set about belabouring the prostrate old man. "That won't get you your money," said Ezio, stepping forward. "Who are you? Friend of his?" "I'm a concerned bystander." "Well, you can take your concern and mind your own fucking business." The sergeant, as Ezio had hoped, stepped too close, and with practised ease Ezio slipped the catch on his hidden blade, and raising his arm, swept it across the guard's exposed throat, just above the gorget he was wearing. The other guards watched, rooted to the spot in astonishment as their leader fell to his knees, his hands futilely scrabbling at the wound to staunch the fountain of blood. Before they could react, Ezio was upon them, and a matter of seconds later the three of them had joined their sergeant on the other side, all three with their throats slit. Ezio's mission left no time for swordplay, only swift, efficient killing. During the skirmish, the piazza emptied as if by magic. Ezio helped the senator to his feet. There was blood on the man's clothes, and he looked, and indeed was, in a state of shock mingled with relief. "We'd better get out of here," Ezio said to him. "I know a place. Follow me," Egidio replied, and set off with remarkable speed for an alleyway between two of the larger government buildings. They hastened down it, turned left, then down some stairs into a basement area which contained a door. This the senator hastily unlocked, ushering Ezio into a small, dark, but comfortable-looking apartment. "My bolt hole," said Egidio. "Useful when you have as many creditors as I have." "But one big one." "My mistake was to consolidate all my debts with the banker. I wasn't fully aware of his exact connections at the time. I should have stuck to Chigi. At least he's honest, as far as a banker can be." Egidio paused. "But what of you? A good Samaritan in Rome? I thought they were a dying breed." Ezio let that go. "You are Senatore Egidio Troche." Egidio looked startled. "Don't tell me I owe you money as well." "No, but you can help me. I'm looking for Cesare's banker." The senator smiled thinly. "Cesare Borgia's banker? Ha! And you are?" "Just let's say I'm a friend of the family." "Cesare has a lot of friends these days. Unfortunately, I am not one of them, so if you'll excuse me, I have some packing to do." "I can pay." Egidio stopped looking nervous. "Ah, you can pay? Ma che meraviglia! He fights off guards for one, and he offers one money. Tell me, where have you been all my life?" "Well, I haven't descended from heaven. You help me and I'll help you. It's as simple as that." Egidio considered this. "We'll go to my brother's place. They've got no quarrel with him, and we can't stay here. It's too depressing, and it's far too close to my, dare I say, our enemies." "Let's go then. But you'll have to protect me. There'll be more of Cesare's guards out after me, and they won't be especially friendly, if you know what I mean. Especially after that little show you put on the piazza." "Come on." Egidio led the way out cautiously, making sure the coast was clear before they set off by a labyrinthine route through back alleys and seedy lanes, across little piazze, and skirting the edges of markets. Twice they encountered pairs of guards, and twice Ezio had to fight them off, this time using his sword to full effect. It seemed that the city was on full alert for both men, and both men in flight together proved too good a bounty for the Borgia henchmen. Time was not on Ezio's side, so when the next pair of guards appeared at the far side of a small piazza, they simply had to run for it, and Ezio, unable to take to the rooftops with the senator in tow, had to depend on Egidio's apparently exhaustive knowledge of Rome's back streets. At last they reached the back of a new and quietly splendid villa, set in its own walled courtyard, a few blocks east of St. Peter's. Egidio let them into the courtyard through a small, iron-bound gate set into one of the walls, for which he produced a key. Once inside, they both breathed more easily. "Someone really wants you dead," said Ezio. "Not yet. They want me to pay them first." Why only once they've got their money? By the sound of things, you're something of a milch cow to them. It isn't that simple. The fact is, I've been a fool. I'm no friend of the Borgia, even if I have borrowed money from them. And recently a bit of information came my way which gave me an opportunity to do them down, if only a little. And that was? A few months ago my brother Francesco, who's Cesare's chamberlain— I know, don't get me started— told me a good deal about Cesare's plans for the Romagna. He plans to create a mini-kingdom there, from which he intends to conquer the rest of the country and bring it to heel. As the Romagna is on the doorstep of the Venetian territories, Venice is already unhappy about Cesare's inroads there. So what did you do? Egidio spread his hands. I wrote to the Venetian ambassador, giving him all the information I got from Francesco, warning him. But one of my letters must have been intercepted. Won't that implicate your brother? He's managed to keep himself in the clear so far. But what possessed you to do such a thing? I had to do something. The Senate has nothing to do, really, these days, except put its imprimatur on all the Borgia decrees. If it didn't, it would cease to exist altogether. As it is, there's no independence. Do you know what it's like not to have un cazzo to do? Egidio shook his head. It changes a man. I admit that even I have taken to gambling and drinking. And whoring. The senator looked at him. Oh, you're good. You're very good. What was it that gave me away? The scent of perfume on my sleeve? Ezio smiled. Something like that. Well, anyway, as I was saying, senators used to do what senators are supposed to do, petitioning about real issues like, I don't know where to start, unlawful cruelty, abandoned children, street crime, lending rates, keeping some kind of rein on Chigi and the other bankers. Now, the only legislation we're allowed to draw up independently concerns stuff like the appropriate width of the sleeves of women's dresses. But not you. You try to raise money for false causes in order to pay off your gambling debts. They're not false causes, my boy. As soon as we have a proper government again, and as soon as I am on an even keel financially, I intend to pursue them vigorously. And when do you think that will be? We must be patient. Tyranny is unbearable, but it never lasts. It's too brittle. I wish I could believe that. Of course you've got to stand up to it, whatever happens. You obviously have to. He paused. I'm probably, 10 or 15 years older than you? I must make the most of my time. Or have you never looked at a grave and thought, this is the most significant thing I will ever do? Die? Ezio was silent. No, continued Egidio, I guess not. He turned in on himself. Maledette letters. I should never have sent them to the ambassador. Now Cesare will kill me as soon as he gets a chance, debt or no debt, unless by some miracle he decides to vent his anger on someone else. God knows he's capricious enough. Someone else? Like your brother? I'd never forgive myself. Why not? You're a politician. We're not all bad. Where is your brother? I've no idea. Not here, thank God. We haven't talked since he found out about the letters, and I'm enough of a liability for him. If he saw you— Can we get down to business? Said Ezio. Of course. One good turn and so on. Now, what was it you wanted again? I want to know where Cesare's banker is, where he works, where he lives. Egidio was suddenly all briskness. Right. I need to arrive with the money. He spread his hands again. Problem is, I have none. I told you I'd get it for you. Just tell me how much, and where you were meeting this banker. I never know until I'm actually there. I usually go to one of 3 prearranged points. His associates meet me and take me to him. I owe 10,000 ducats. No problem. Sul serio? Egidio almost beamed. You have to stop this. You might actually give me hope. Stay here. I'll return with the money at sunset. Early in the evening, Ezio returned to an increasingly incredulous Egidio. He placed 2 heavy leather bags in the senator's hands. You came back! You actually came back! You waited. I'm a desperate man. I cannot believe you would just do this. There is a condition. I knew it. Listen, Ezio said. If you survive, and I hope you will, I want you to keep an eye on what's going on politically in this city. And I want you to report everything you find to... He hesitated, then said, to Madonna Claudia at the bordello they call the Rosa in Fiore. Especially anything you can pick up on the Borgia. Ezio smiled inwardly. Do you know the place? Egidio coughed. I have a friend who sometimes frequents it. Good. What will you do with this information? Make the Borgia disappear? Ezio grinned. I'm just recruiting you. The senator looked at the bags of money. I hate to give this to them. He fell into a thoughtful silence, then said, My brother has watched my back because we're family. I hate the pezzo di merda, but he is still my brother. He works for Cesare. Egidio pulled himself together. Va bene. They sent me word of the meeting place this afternoon while you were gone. The timing's perfect. They're impatient for their money, so the meeting's tonight. I sweated blood, you know, when I told their messenger that I'd be sure to have their money ready for them. Paused again. We should go soon. What will you do? Follow me? It wouldn't look good if you didn't seem to be alone. Egidio nodded. Good. Just time for a glass of wine before we set off, then. Will you join me? No. Well, I certainly need one.